In 1927, at the age of 25, he took a job working with the children of Freud patients and friends, and the school approached development of psychoanalytically, and Erickson was soon to master this theory and begin developing his own theories relating to personality and development. So his two major contributions to psychodynamic is reappraisal of the ego and the extended view of developmental stages. Erickson's stage of psychosocial development, like Freud and many others, Erickson maintained that personality develops in predetermined order. Instead of focusing on sexual development, however, he was interested in how children socialize and how this affect their sense of self. He saw personality as developing throughout the lifetime and look at the identity crisis at the focal point of each stage of human development. Erickson's theory of psychosocial development has 8 distinct stages, so each stage with 2 possible outcomes. So according to the theory, successful completion of each stage can result in a healthy personality and successful interaction with others, while failure to successfully complete a stage can result in a reduced ability to complete further stage and therefore more unhealthy personality and sense of self. Epigenetic principle of maturation, the idea that human development is governed by the sequence of stages that dependent genetic or heredity factors. So according to Erickson, crisis is turning point phase each developmental stage. While basic strength, according to Erickson, motivating characteristic and belief that derives from satisfactory resolution of the crisis and its development stage. The oral sensory stage of psychological development occurs during our first year of life. Trust versus mistrust. So for example, if the mother responds appropriately to the baby's physical needs and provides ample affection, love, and security, and the infant will develop a sense of trust. So if the mother is rejecting, unattended, or inconsistent on her behavior, the infant will develop attitudes of mistrust and will may versus shame and doubt. So between the age of 1 and 3, children are beginning to assert their independence by walking away from their mother and picking toys to play with and making choices about what they want to wear, what they want to eat, and etc. So if children in this stage are encouraged and support their increased independence by their parents, if they become more confident and secure in their own ability to survive in the world. So if the children are criticized, overly controlled, and not given the opportunity to assert themselves, they begin to feel inadequacy in their own ability to survive and may then become overly independent upon others or lack self-esteem and feel a sense of shame and doubt in their own abilities. Initiative versus guilt. So the locomotor genital stage, which occurs between 3 to 5 years old, is similar to the phallic stage of Freud's system. So motor and mental abilities are continuing to develop and children can accomplish more in their own, and they express desire in many activities. Industrious versus inferiority. So in Erickson latency stage of psychosocial development, which occurs from 6 to 11 corresponds to Freud latency period. So according to Erickson, referred to as according to Erickson, industry is referred to primarily as a means of attaining. So identity versus role confusion. So during adolescence, the transmission from childhood to adulthood is the most important. Children are becoming more independent and begin to look at the future in terms of career, relationship, families, housing, and etc. So during this period, they explore possibilities and begin to form their own identity based upon the outcome of their exploration. So this sense of who they are can be hindered, which result in a sense of confusion. So at this stage, we are still confused what we want to be, or what we want to be when we grow up, or what we want to be in the future. Intimacy versus isolation occurring in young adulthood. So at this stage, we begin to share ourselves more intimately with others. We explore relationship leading toward longer term commitments with someone other than family member. So it can be your close friend, best friend, or BF, GF, but the best example of longer term commitment is your future wife or future husband, because you have a plan ahead to getting married, to have a family in the future, and to live each other until death do us part. So, and that that is how ego integrity versus despair. So during the final stage of psychological development, maturity, and old age, we are confronted with a choice of ego integrity and despair. This attitude govern we evaluate the whole of our life. Ego integrity involves accepting one place and one past. At the age of 55 above, we grow older and become a senior citizens. So at this stage, we tend to slow down our productivity and explore life as a retired person. During this time, we contemplate our accomplishment and are able to develop integrity if we see ourselves as a leading successful. So if we see our lives unproductive, we feel guilt about our past, or feel that we did not accomplish our life goals and ambition in life. We become dissatisfied with life and develop despair, often leading to depression and hopelessness. Basic weaknesses is motivating characteristic that device from unsatisfactory resolution of developmental crisis. And maldevelopment is a condition that occurs when the ego consists solely of single way of coping with conflict. Assessment in Erick-Erickson theory, psychohistorical analysis is an application of lifespan theory to lives of historical figures. And psychological test is an instrument based on crisis states. Research in Erick-Erickson theory, play construction theory, is a personality assessment technique for children in which structure assembled from dolls, blocks, and toys are analyzed. So, an extensive research program on adolescent stage of development identify 5 psychosocial types or status for that period. So, first is achievement, identity, moratorium, foreclosure, identity diffusion, and last is alienated achievement. So when we see identity achievement, it describes adolescents who are committed to occupational and ideological choices. Second is moratorium. So this second adolescence status describe people who are still undergoing their identity crisis. So third is foreclosure. Describe adolescents who have not experienced an identity crisis but who are family committed to occupational and ideology. Fourth is identity diffusion. A status characterizes people who have no occupational or ideological commitments in adolescence who may not have experienced an identity crisis. Fifth status is alienated achievement. Describe experience and adolescents who have no occupational goal and cling to beliefs that are critical of the social. Male identity focuses on individual competence and knowledge, whereas female identity is more centered on relating to others. In other words, when women establish an identity, they depend heavily on social relationship, while men focus more on self and individual and skills and abilities. So during our adolescence development, there are three key elements for this developmental stage. First is conflict with parents, characterized by forceful resistance to adult authority. Second is mood disruption, characterized by a volatile emotional life, mood swings, and episode of depression. And third is risky behaviors, characterized by reckless rule breaking and antisocial behavior that may harm themselves and others. Third is risky behavior and characterized by reckless rule breaking and antisocial behavior that may harm themselves and others. So there are four stages in development of psychological healthy black identity. So first is pre-encounter, which includes three identity cluster. So first is simulation identity, second is miseducation identity, and self-hatred identity. So when we say simulation identity, it contains a little racial awareness or racial identity. When we say simulation identity, it contains a little racial awareness or racial identity. Then, miseducation identity, which internalize negative stereotypes about being black. Then, next is self-hatred identity, which involves holding highly negative views about black, resulting anti-black and self-hating attitudes. So next is encounter stage, so which the person is subjective to regime to discrimination. So third is the immersion stage, proposed two identities, which first is immersion identity, which celebrate everything black as good. Then the immersion anti-white identity views white as wrong. So last is the internalization stage, also consists two identities. One is black nationalism, which adheres to pro-black Afrocentric perspective, whereas the multiculturalist inclusive identity embraced not only black identity but also other types of ethnic, racial, and gender identity. Research in Erick-Erickson theory, generative evoke need to feel closer to others, correlated with extraversion, openness to new experience, like to be involved in a community or social relationship. So maturity, high ego, integrity spend much time reviewing their lives, while ethnic identity is significant factor in determining sense of self.